All right. All right, everybody. Welcome. This is the first brand new show called Hard Rock History. This is episode one. We're actually taping this on St. Patrick's Day, and I'm enthralled. This man I've been listening to since I'm a teenager, and not saying anything about his age. He looks fantastic for his
No,
age.
I don't know. Get me on.
And he's a multi-talented instrumentalist from the bands UFO.Gary, Moore, Wild Horses. I mean, Neil Carter, thank you so much for even
Hi.
breathing the air that I'm in right now.
That's a great pleasure to be here with you. A very great pleasure indeed. Yeah.
Neil, like I said, let me give you a little history of how I got encountered you. Uh, I got to you with Gary Moore first. So
Right.
I'm at Lemoore's
The
in
Moors,
Brooklyn,
yes.
and a DJ named Alex Kane, and this is pre you.
Right.
He said, "All right, we're going to play the song "End of the World."
Right.
And
Okay.
there's gigantic guitar solos in the beginning, and I think I'm literally like I was 15 years old, and you weren't allowed to get into the clubs then, but I was like 6 feet tall.
Okay.
So I was a big boy, and everybody's funny, but my whole neighborhood we used the same birth certificate back then
That's pretty good.
because
That's
the guy was
good.
like
Yeah.
21 years old or whatever. But then after a while, we kept going to the clubs, we never got thrown out. We never started any trouble. That whole looking at IDs things they allowed us in. So anyway,
Right.
so they're playing that, and then I hear this vocal. And back in the day, no internet. You had to search for something, and I had a imported record store called Zigzags, and they had Corridors of Power. And now Marlene, there was Jack Bruce
Yes.
singing the vocals on it, and
Right.
and, and I and I learned of Gary Moore,
Yeah.
and I'm
Right.
like, holy shit! And that was the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I went
Yeah.
I went into the deep dive, and then luckily, you came with victims. You came out with victims, so that's how you came on to me. So I wasn't. I was a Shanker guy.
Yeah.
I wasn't a Chapman guy. Again, you got it at my age. As I
Yeah.
grew older, I grew wiser,
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
and I grew
Right.
more appreciative. To be
Yeah.
honest with
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
you, you
Yeah.
know. So now let's get to you. So now, what was the start? What was the bing that's made you say, I want to play music for the rest of my life, or want to try?
Yeah, well, it was. I lived in a pretty musical household, and my mother was a very great enthusiast, and my father was as well. And I learned. Everyone in my era, learned the piano. So this was what you did. You learned the piano. And every house had a piano in England. It was a very common thing. Well, not everyone, but most of them. And I just started playing the piano had lessons. I then took up the recorder, which is an evil instrument. But that led on to me playing the clarinet. So my first proper instrument, my first level of proficiency was on the clarinet. It was never really the piano. The piano was something that came along. And then I listened to Queen, and it just blew my mind. And I did play the bass. I played the bass with a school band, and that was when I was about 14, I suppose. But considering that at 14, 4 years later, I was professional and doing things. It was a very, very quick process. And I used to be the lead singer of the band I was in. I then was a lead guitarist with some of the bands I was in. And then eventually it morphed into being the band that went with Gilbert O'Sullivan, and that was my first professional
And
experience.
did you automatically have the ear?
I suppose, yeah. A lot of my life has been a lot of enthusiasm, and sort of not necessarily. I wouldn't characterize myself as any sort of technician, apart from on the clarinet. I can play the clarinet to a decent standard, but I'm not in the keyboard way. I am not Don Airy or John Lord. On the guitar, I'm not anything approaching any of the people that I played with. But I do my influences on the guitar were Mick Ronson and Brian May.
Okay.
And I can sort of hear myself. I mean, I did some lead playing on Mogg's Motel,
Yes.
mainly to say this is where the solo goes, but Phil liked what I did. And he said to me, "Oh, it sounds a bit like Mick Ronson." And I thought, oh, obviously that doesn't leave you years later. You've been influenced by these people. But seeing David Bowie, Mick Ronson, Queen was the kick that gave me from not proceeding down the classical route and proceeding down the rock route.
Right.
Yeah.
And were you able to read sheet music?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, I do a
I
lot of.
mean now, but I mean as a child,
Yeah.
were you able to
Oh
grasp
God, yeah, yeah,
onto
yeah.
it?
No, we were all. I was trained in all that stuff. Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I didn't. I took what we call O-level music, which was about like the end of junior high, senior high, I suppose. So it's no. Do I mean senior high in America? It's when you're about 16, you take these exams. So I had GCSE O-level music, and then I decided I was going to be a rock star. So I left all sort of formal education. I left school. I had a little job for about a year, and then I went professional, which basically meant my parents supported me.
And how
Um,
did your parents take it when that announcement happened?
well, my mother cried for 2 weeks. I had been trailed round all these sort of concerts, and we went for audition. I went for auditions at the Royal Colleges, and really punching above my weight because at 16 they didn't take you. They took you at 18. I think it was 16. So I just thought I just realised it's not what I wanted to do. You know, it really wasn't what I wanted to do. So rock music had got me.
Yeah. So was Wild Horses your real professional band? Making
That's
it wise, starting to make it wise?
Yeah, I've been sort of with this band called Wilder, who were the Gilbert O'Sullivan backing band.
Oh yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure. That must have been
And
some. Now, was he at? Were you with him at his height, with Alone
um,
Again and everything?
no, it was after that because he was still doing well. It was about 1978, and he wanted a rock band to support him, and so he took us who were relatively green. I've said this before, but I was the lead singer of that band, so I was a bit redundant. So, but because I played keyboards, I think I played 6 instruments in the course of 45 minutes.
You were
So I
very
played
useful.
I was very useful, and if
Yeah.
you're useful, you're used. But I had no ability, like the saxophone. I'd never touched the saxophone up until that point where they said, "Would you play saxophone?" I said, "Well, I'll have a go," and that's always been my mantra. I'll have a go. So
Hmm.
it wasn't my instrument, it really wasn't. Clarinet has always been my instrument. So anyway, yeah, so we did that, and then I got the hunger for it because we were playing good venues in England, and we did some TV. We did, a full concert on TV. It was really good, and it gave me the hunger to want to do it
Right, right.
totally professionally. So from that, I did lots of auditions, and then I saw a thing there were these papers, 4 music papers in England, and one was called
Oh,
Sounds.
sounds. Oh gosh,
Yeah,
yeah. That's one of
yeah,
the
and
Bibles.
yeah, the Bible. Yeah, I used to buy
Yes.
all 4 of them every week. And there was a bit in the gossip column saying that Brian Robertson, who'd just been elbowed out of Thin Lizzy, was forming a band with Jimmy Baggin and Kenny Jones of the Who.
Those are
And they,
those are a lot of heavy hitters, boy.
there's a heavy hitters there,
Yeah.
and they need a young, fresh, new guitar player. And I thought, that's me. That's me. I'm gonna do this.
Looked in the
Yeah,
mirror, he said,
yeah,
there
this
he
is me.
is.
This is me. And I think I started the right look, and I had the right edge to my plan. I must admit, I listened back. They've just released a Wild Horses box set of things, and I don't think my lead playing was particularly brilliant, but I did do some bit of lead, and twin guitar stuff with Brian, and they took me on. I mean, it was. I mean, I joined the band, it was Kenny Jones. By the time we started rehearsing, we had Dixie Lee, who was with Paul in Lone Star, and Dixie didn't really last very long. And then we got Clive Edwards, and who was the
Clive, yeah,
drummer. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And Clive, Clive and I were best friends. We really were, and we were sort of like they were the A list and we were the C list. So he and I had to share a room where they both had their own rooms, and it was all a little bit hierarchical. Hierarchical, is that the word? Yeah, hierarchical. But it was very good experience. Really, really good experience. I did my groundwork, my spade work with them. Really
Well,
did.
he said in '79 you did the Reading Festival. So I mean, like you hit it running,
Yeah.
basically,
Oh,
with
yeah,
this
yeah,
band.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
we did.
you
Yeah.
guys had representation already and everything
Yeah.
going in?
Yeah. They were managed by Thin Lizzy's management.
Okay.
And they were very wise because they didn't put money in themselves. So Brian funded it because Brian obviously been doing quite well with the Lizzie stuff. But so they yeah, it was good. It was good. Hard work, very rock and roll. The lifestyle, I found some of the lifestyle didn't suit me too
Did
well.
did Brian? I know. Well, stories here is that Brian, cut his hand on a bottle that ruined the U.S. tour. There were a
Yeah,
lot of things that were plagued with Thin Lizzy, not to really make it gigantic in the States.
yeah, it's weird. I mean, they did tour. Did they not tour with Queen? Or am I
Queen.
imagining?
That was the spot.
The one, yeah.
Yeah.
Lizzie were one of my favourite bands. They were definitely one of my favourite bands. Because actually, weirdly enough, I didn't really know much about UFO, so I knew Thin Lizzy, and then I was with the Horses, so it was all intertwined. And we used to go out and Phil line up, and we used to spend time. And Scott and Phil used to get up and play with us, and it was all very connected with at that time. And then, ironically, when I was with Gary, it was the same thing that Phil lineup was a factor in all our
Yeah.
bits and pieces. So the paths get crossing through the years. But Wild Horses was a very good apprenticeship for me. Really, really good. And they took a chance on someone that was very naive and very new and no experience. Well, had experience, but not a masses of experience.
Now, was
Not
was there problems in your sightings with was there like the drinking and like was it solid at the performances, or then it started getting a little bit shaky and you were starting to like go maybe I should move on? Is what happened?
I think fortunately we took a long time to get a deal, and the initial buzz of it and the initial fun of it was there. I really did enjoy it. I didn't like starting rehearsals at 10 o'clock at night and finishing at 9 in the morning, particularly. But that was how they like doing things. And I don't know really. It was, yeah. I just got to the stage where I thought, really, I once the album came out and it didn't do fantastically.
Mm.
Um, I was thinking, is there more now? Should I do something? And it was by happenstance that Phil Collin, who I knew quite well because he
And
was
he
in
was a
Girl.
girl at the time, or with
Yeah,
Leopard.
yeah, so Phil, I knew Phil quite well, and the only time I ever saw UFO was when when I was with Wild Horses, and we went to a Hammersmith gig, and Girl was supporting, and I knew them all. So yeah, so that and the only time I ever encountered Paul Raymond was backstage very briefly then, and that's the only time I ever shared air with Paul. Michael a couple of times, but yeah, and so that was it really, and Phil told Moog about me,
Mm.
and he thought that I'd be the ideal replacement
Because
for.
now Paul Raymond is leaving, or did he leave already?
He'd already left. Yeah,
Because he went to the Michael Schenker group.
yeah. They
Yeah.
they were doing a US tour, and I think again, bands they sort of have bad times, good times, or whatever with one another. And yeah, Paul either went or they asked him to. I don't know what happened.
So
He
now,
just
did you get in on the end of the No Place to Run tour, or was it that everything was fresh now for you?
it was basically the tail end of the No Place to Run tour, which was the two dates and then Reading Festival, which was
Right.
my third gig headlining the
And
Reading Festival.
you're used to Reading already now.
Yeah, 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 quite ready. Yeah, I don't know. I've never. I don't feel intimidated by lots of crowd. For me, it's the best bit. If I sat with someone in a room jamming, I'd feel really, really nervous. But
Mm.
I've got a crowd of. Well, I mean, that one was 33,000, I think. But I did some gigs with Gary with Queen, and there were 90,000 people, 90,000 people.
Wow.
And to be honest, I love it. It couldn't be better for me. That electricity between you and the people
Well,
that are
I
playing.
always felt you always gave a high energy performance as it was. You were jumping around.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
always really gave even towards the end here with UFO. You really was there. You know.
yeah, yeah. I think I've always had a bit of I'm not an introspective player. I'm
Right.
not an introspective musician. And I always think that all the work you do in the studio and the rehearsal studio is the main bit of it. And then once you get on stage, you're performing, and you are performing and entertaining and making people, bringing people in. Pete Way was so good at that. Bringing people into your world when you're on stage. So therefore, to me, it's very natural. I sometimes have to rein myself in a bit because I found myself on that American tour. I was having such a brilliant time, and I thought, hang on, you're slightly overdoing it here, so pull it in a bit. But I do really love performing. Really
Yeah.
do. It's the thing I miss the most. To be honest, I miss that more than anything else. So yeah, it's a bit of a. I'm afraid COVID was a bitter pill for so many people. For us particularly because we had so much more. Whereas it was meant to be the last tour, Phil had got a bit of a second wind, and we were going to do more in
Right.
that year and the year after. I mean, he would have carried on. Obviously he wasn't going to be. We know now that he wasn't well, but we didn't know that then. So I think his every intention was to. We're going to go to South America, or there were a lot of places we're going to go.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
So
it's a
now,
bit.
so now we approach. Let me see if I get. Here we go. There. So
There it is. Look,
yeah,
the
you're missing on here.
Oh no, Paul! I have to come over to Staten Island. I'm going to go and visit the vampires, and then I'll come and sign the thing.
You come for the pool and barbecue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So
So
that album I joined about 2/3 of the way through.
so the process was happening on the
Yeah, there
album.
were backing tracks. I've still got tapes of all the backing tracks and everything that I had while we were doing the album. And I mean, there's no secret to the fact that Phil tends to be the last one doing things. So Phil will come up with the lyrics,
Okay.
and might have some melodies. And Phil's very good at putting things together. So he'll sort of guide one when you're actually coming up with a song, and so he'll know what he wants to sing over, which is great. That's what he wants to do. So the Wilder Willie was pretty much backing tracks and even some guitar solos, but no vocals. And then I was in it for the vocals. I did all the backing vocals, and I did apart from a couple of bits we had, and I did the saxophone, and I did a little bit of keyboards, tiny little bit of keyboards, but the other keyboards were done by someone else who, to this day, we can't confirm who it was. So we're not sure if it's John Sloman or a friend of Paul's or a friend of the engineers. We still don't
Well,
actually.
they had Sloman as uncredited, John
Yeah,
Sloman.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it probably was John. I mean, I think Paul was maybe sort of hoping that he would get John to come in and do it. But you see, John being such a strong vocalist, it wouldn't have been a fit for John, really. He was with Gary
Right.
at some point, and again, it was a bit like it's difficult to know what to do with someone that is like that, that's got a great voice. He can play guitar and keyboards, but in a way, it doesn't really work. You need someone, he wasn't the right fit for John, at all. You
Right.
know.
Right. Right. And you guys went off on an extensive tour. Now, do you remember your openers for Wild Willing?
The opening songs. I think we started with Chain Chains. I
Right.
think. Do you know what is really good now? Is you've got Setlist FM, and
Right.
I now can't because I got rid of a lot. I got rid of a lot of my stuff,
Yeah.
and I don't know where I've been and what I've done. So it's quite useful for me to be able to look it up and see where we were and what we played, and so that's pretty good. I mean, it's all pretty well documented on there.
My all time favorite song is "Profession of Violence."
Oh yeah, that's great.
Tonka's solo
Yeah,
is I would put that up against any Shanker solo ever. The
right.
feeling that I mean, and I wanted, and you know what sucks? It fades out.
Yeah.
I wanted that to go on for like another
Oh,
5 minutes. It was so brilliant, so clean.
yeah. I haven't, I've not heard it for so long. And
Oh,
I know, and in fact, we are just about, they're going to release in May a
a
new,
new box set.
yeah, the remastered version. So there's
Yes,
a remastered version and a live gig from Hammersmith over.
yes.
So that's all in the works. And I've just done an interview for the Mechanics release. So
So are they going to do doing a box set?
I
Oh,
think, well, I don't really call it a box set because it's just actually one
like
album.
a
So,
deluxe.
yeah, so it's a reissue and a what do they call it when they remaster it? They remastered it for about the third time.
Yeah.
And so they're doing a really nice final version of it with interviews, and then
Oh,
there's
that's
an.
fantastic.
I think they'll go up to Making Contact. I think they might go to Misdemeanor, but because I think Phil was still with Chrysalis then, but I'm not sure about that. But I know they're planning to do Up to Making Contact at the moment. So
Was Profession ever done live?
no, no,
Wow.
I don't remember us ever. The thing is, you've got Love to Love, haven't you? So if you don't play Love to Love, you can't really. It's ballads in a rock set. Very difficult to
Yeah.
actually have more than one, you know.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we ever attempted it. I think they did it in a session. Did they not? Am I
They
right?
did it with Vinnie Moore
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
DVD in studio.
yeah, that's
That's
right.
recorded that you can see it.
Yeah, I've never listened to it. But what I like in that on that album particularly are the strings. I love the string arrangements. I think it's really class. It's a really class.
It is.
Yeah,
You know what? That is a song that anybody of any genre can really appreciate. It's one of
yeah,
those types of songs. Phil's everything is on point. Phil's
yeah, yeah,
vocals, and
yeah,
I said, and then Talk is the guitar coming in at the end is just
yeah,
so brilliant. I mean,
yeah.
I'm thinking I'm gonna listen to it again when we're done.
Do
That's how
that.
great it is.
I'll do
It's
it too. I'll do it too. Oh, it's funny. The other day I was listening to Love to Love. Had never heard. I know you might think it's weird, but I'd never listened to the original, and so it's
studio
like,
version.
yeah,
Oh wow.
that is that bit with the guitar at the beginning, and the I've never heard it.
Yeah,
So
different.
yeah, my life is on a need to know basis. So I actually learned Love to Love from a live tape that had been recorded that the year I joined. So I learned it how Paul was playing it then. And in fact, even if I listen to it now on the recorded version, the studio one, it's different. It's actually even
Yeah.
the keyboard bit is different to how I remember I learned it. So one day if we do manage to do some motel gigs and we do something like Love to Love, I think I'm going to revisit it, and try and do it in the old way
And
rather than you know.
do you remember the touring wise? Was it successful? What were the
Oh,
opening bands? Do you remember any of the opening bands for you guys?
ooh, right, there's a point. I know Girl did it. And in the States, now what happened in the States for that tour? We toured with Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick were headlining, and then other dates we did on our own.
That was and you played Radio City Music Hall.
We did with Cheap Trick. Yeah, I know.
That's a big venue.
That's a fantastic venue.
Yeah, I love it.
But I always thought it was 2 nights, but Setlist FM tells me it's one night, but I thought we did two. That was real fandom at that point with Cheap Trick. They were screaming girls, and it was quite funny actually. And I had to be manhandled out to the bus, picked up by these people because there were so many screaming people, like girls outside the gig. Yeah, and we did some gigs of our own. Like we did places like Chicago. We could always do a good. We did 2 nights, I think, in
Yeah,
Chicago.
right. That
Um,
was the home base for UFO.
yeah, and then in Texas, and Iron Maiden opened for us on the West Coast for a few dates, and Aldo Nova.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, I'm trying to think of all these people. There were a lot of people. But again, the memory. I mean, I do better
Oh,
than
I'm
Phil.
sure.
I do a lot better than Phil. You say to Phil something, you say, I'm a bit vague, and so But then there's a lot of stuff gone on over the years. So a lot of bands, and a lot of support acts, and all that.
Any shenanigans you remember during that tour?
Shenanigans. Well, the usual Tonka, Pete Way mischievousness, and Phil used to sort of like stir the pot slightly, and then Pete was, I mean, he was just unbelievable
Did
character.
you know what you were getting into with Pete Way?
No, I didn't know them. I didn't know them at all. I was actually, to be honest, I found it funnier than anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, they never particularly, according to Phil, and I don't remember this, but according to Phil, Pete tried to break into my bedroom in when we were recording somewhere, and tried because he thought I had some substances, and he tried to break in, and I had one of my cats with me, and he just remember frightening the cat. I don't remember that at all, but it does sound very much like Pete, to be honest. But yeah, no, I mean Andy got to be honest, he got the most of the butt of the jokes back then. They thought I was very pure. So my ex-wife and I used to sit at the back of the bus, and Pete called it the chapel. So like I was sitting there thinking, trying to get away from all this mayhem. And of course, Tonka was such a bigger than life character. Everyone brought their partners with them for the most part. So Phil's girlfriend was always there. Tonka's wife was there on and off, and first wife, second wife, whatever. And Pete's wife was there sometimes. But Jean, Phil's girlfriend, was always there, and Andy's wife came out from time to time, and my wife came out. So it was a bit more. It was different to when I was with Gary because we had no partners with us at all. It was always just the band, and it had to be always just the band. It was very much Gary's thing. He didn't want to have outside influences.
Hmm.
Yeah, no doubly. So
Right, right. So now we come upon I say this is truly my favorite. This is my favorite of your
yeah,
era. I mean,
right, okay.
let it rain. We belong to
Yeah,
the night.
yeah.
Terry. I mean, Terry. I have a King Biscuit Flower Hour
Oh yeah, right,
that
yeah.
has of a recording from St. Louis
The Lewis, yes.
with
Any
you
of the
guys,
any of
and
the
hearing, and
people.
that was my first time hearing Terry. It's such a brilliant song. I mean, like
Thank you.
the opening of "We Belong to the Night." I mean, when Phil would come around on our tours before you, and we would always say, and this is during the Vinnie Moore era, we say you got to get Tonka up, you got to find him and let him play or record something, and you got to start doing the Paul Chapman era
Yeah,
songs.
right. Yeah,
Because it was getting a bit stale them coming around a lot. Even though when they would do new stuff,
yeah,
the Vinnie Moore era, it was
yeah,
still, the same, and listen, I understand how it is like Kiss got to play rock and roll all over, yeah. But there's certain things like I'm a purist of UFO. I want to hear this. I want to hear or take this part out and maybe add this song. So no
yeah,
matter what, every time we got Phil, and I literally rolled his eyes a lot when we said, and then when you came back and they started doing "We Belong to the Night," I was, oh my god, and the
yeah.
opening too with the faders coming up, of fantastic,
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
good. I like that. That riff was written in a hotel room in New York City. I remember doing it. Actually, can
Wow.
remember writing that, which actually someone pointed out to me the other day does sound a bit like "Are You Ready" of Thin Lizzy's, but we won't worry about
Uh
that.
huh. Uh huh.
Yeah, those things like that, and the beginning of the writer, the riff for the writer, and Let It Rain as well, the beginning of Let It Rain.
Oh,
They're all things
beautiful.
that came out when we were on tour doing Wild Will, the Wild the Willing tour. So I always had a like a tape machine with me, and I used to spend my 3 days recording ideas because I'd never written anything. So up until when I joined UFO, I'd never written a song. So started to write songs. So suddenly I was set free, and I started coming up with the stuff. And I used to give it all to Phil, so you pick out what you like, and then we'll work on it. So that's to this day, that's what I do. I mean, I can do it a bit more in a complete fashion now because I have more technology to do it. But
Right.
I just send him, completed, intro, verse, chorus, middle eight, guitar solo, and everything. And it's all complete for him to try and sing over. So, yeah,
And like doing it all for you, brilliant.
yeah,
I'm glad that was
yeah,
done live. And
yeah,
feel it's a really hard rocking song.
yeah. It is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Blistering guitar solo in the beginning. I mean, Andy banging the drums. I mean, really
Mm.
beating the crap out of those drums.
Yeah, and do you know he did when we did that album when we recorded it at Montreux at Queen's Studio, which was for me like
That
going
must have been a thrill.
Mecca. Yeah, it was, yeah. But Andy was stuck in this massive sort of like concert hall um, in the drums, and we had him via video link. And somewhere I've got pictures of us in the control room, and Parker sitting in this via video link. Pete used to pay awful tricks on him. I can't remember what they were now, but I just remember it being a real perfect thing for Pete to wind Andy up at the time. So yeah, it was very good. I mean, we did about a month there recording. It was very expensive, that album to record. It really
And
was.
I'm looking on Wiki, and you were in the same place where Asia was at the time. Now, was Asia recording the first album?
Oh, I don't know. Were they?
All
I
right,
don't.
well, here we go with here's Wiki, and there's quotes from you. Okay, so it says, we got into pre-production. Asia was practicing upstairs in the big room, and we were downstairs in the little one, but mostly just sat around looking at each other, or we would go upstairs and listen to Asia, or just go for something to do, or go down to the pub. By then, Neil was involved and had some ideas, but a lot of them were very softer keyboard orientated, and Pete was like, I'm not sure about this, but this album really has its moments, and that was a quote from Tonka.
Okay, was it? Oh, yeah, right. I know Paul did have a way of slightly rewriting
A
the
history,
yeah, he was very good at that. You know, he'd say, "Hey boy, I've got this idea," and Andy Parker would say to Paul, "That's a Led Zeppelin song." "Oh, I know, but I've got another idea." You know, and he was just such a character. But yeah, it's funny if that quote because actually, if you think about it, the things that I came up with, I didn't come the softest thing on the album was Terry, which is Paul's
right,
song.
right,
So the rest of it, like "We Belong to the Night," you know, all these things. I think I don't quite what he meant by that, but it's fine. I mean, it's, you know, bless his heart. But I think what he means is when we were rehearsing, because because we were like pack horses, and we were doing tour, having like a day off and then going to do an album, then having another day off and then going to do another tour.
right,
You know, we were never really prepared. This is why I started writing stuff on the road because we were never prepared for an album. So you'd find yourself in the studio trying to write songs, which is a bit of an expensive way of doing it. So we did rehearse a little bit and we did try and write. And I think that's when Asia were in the room above. We were in the lower room trying to, because Gary Lyons came to the session and he was appalled that we had nothing for him to produce, you know. So I think it was, we were just worked to death. We were just worked to death. And, you know, that we came up with anything credible at all is quite a miracle, I think, sometimes.
yeah. I have the let me see. We go. I have the
Yeah,
remastered version of it, and "Heal of a Stranger" is great. I'm glad that made it on
yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
because that was a Japanese bonus track.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think we could all say that perhaps something else could have gone somewhere else. But the you know it's there. You know, I did say to Andy, well, they couldn't have, but I would have loved to have gone in and remixed something else and taken all the crap off it and
Okay,
just have it like Pete wanted it because I didn't. I think I was a bit, you know, still a bit newish. And Gary Lyons, I won't blame Gary Lyons, but he was a very strong personality, and I think I just got swept along with it. But I listen to it now and I really think, oh no, no.
can I ask you? I mean, you're doing such great original material. Was there purpose for the cover?
They always seem to up to that album be a cover song, and Pete, like I said, wanted it to sound like the Sex Pistols.
Hmm.
Um, and unfortunately, we did the backing track. Pete went off, and Gary, and no one was saying at the time, "I don't like that." So it was only when we finished it, and it sort of then Pete, you know, Pete didn't like it. I don't know what Phil thinks of it, but I mean, it was just, I don't know, it's one of those things. But when we got to making contact, we had so much material that we didn't need to do a cover. You know, so
Right.
wasn't. It just seemed to be a tradition with them to do a cover, but really, I don't know. I don't know why. Mystery Train is my favourite one. I think.
Yes, it's great.
Again, you know, need to know basis. I don't know what else they covered, but I think Mystery Train is a good one. You know, so.
And any memories of the tour?
Yes, we went because we went on the Aussie Express, which was up and down,
Was
obviously
that
because of.
during Diary?
Yeah, that was Diary. Yeah, it was up and down, obviously because of poor Randy dying, and then it just seemed to feel, you know, Crazy Train. It's a very much. It felt like a Crazy Train. It
Now,
really did.
it was
You know.
post Randy's death. You
No,
got
we started with Randy
Oh
playing.
wow, wow.
Yeah. Randy. We finished. There was a date in
Well, it's
summer.
Florida.
Yeah, well, just before we were in Louisville, somewhere like Louisville or somewhere in Knoxville or somewhere like that, with one of those Kentucky-ish sort of
Yes.
places. Oh yeah, I remember it because a guy turned up with a dead cat around his waist. I remember that, and he'd been quite upset by that, and a cow's head. And then
Okay.
we went, yeah, and then we went down to Florida, and we found out, a couple of days later that Randy had been killed. I felt incredibly sorry for. I mean, I knew Don Airy, I knew quite well, and we got to know them all pretty well, and I just felt devastated for them. I really did.
Sure.
But the weird thing was that talk, there was something about it that it felt like something bad was going to
It
happen.
felt off.
Yeah, and I don't know really if that was true, but that's how I felt at the time. Didn't feel comfortable. But we did all right. I mean, we did all right. On that tour, it was a good slot for us.
So
Second
now
down.
Randy passes away, and there's a halt, basically.
Yeah, there were 2. I think it was a 2-week halt.
And
Uh,
then that's when they got Bernie Tormé in.
yeah, but Bernie, and Bernie's first gig. Am I right in saying was Madison Square Garden, or am I
I
wrong?
was there.
Yeah.
I was it.
So yeah,
And from the distance, if you want to laugh, so again, being a child,
yeah,
and I think I was, I don't know, eight, it was like 80, was it 82? I
yeah,
think he passed
yeah,
away, right? Yeah, so I was like 15, and from the distance, you saw a blonde haired guitar player. There were no
yeah,
monitors or screens back in the
yeah. Of
day,
course, yeah,
You had
yeah,
binoculars.
yeah.
Well, you were up there to be
Oh,
stay
no, you
close.
didn't. Yeah, no,
And
no,
we
no, no.
saw a blonde haired guy on stage, and all of us around were like, "It was a lie," because
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then Bernie started playing the guitar
yeah,
solo, and we're
yeah.
like, "That's not Randy," That's
I mean, Bernie was in a different type of. He was a different type of player, because he
that was
was
a
in.
crash course too, honestly.
I don't envy anyone, to be honest. And in fact, they asked Gary, and Gary said no. They asked a few. I think they might have asked Michael. I don't know. That might be urban myth. But Bernie was only with them for a couple of few weeks, and then Brad Gillis took over,
Yes,
and that's what I remember to the end of the tour. I just remember that to the end. But then we did a lot of shows with Rainbow. We did a lot of shows. I can't remember what year it was, but judging by the trousers, it might have been 81. But we did. We used to do quite a few shows with Rainbow, European festivals, all that sort of thing. European festivals weren't as much of a thing as they are now. I mean, you had Donington, and you had in England, and you had Reading, but now there's all these things right round, Europe. So
it's
when I
crazy now.
yeah, when I was back with UFO last time, I can't believe the amount of festivals we did. Really big festivals with some great acts, and it was like your own tribute band. You're going out as your own tribute band. So because that's how people make money nowadays. Apparently, that's what brings in the bucks. So
Right.
that and merchandising is what feeds people's careers now. That feeds their stomachs. Anyway, unless you're Adele, and then you're selling shitloads of CDs or whatever. But really, that is really live performance and merch is what
And
people
were there
make.
headlining dates within the states also? They did this in
Yes,
Chicago again and so
yeah,
forth.
Chicago again. The Midwest, South, and California. Always those sort of territories. Were always the same. Never quite connected. Like New York, we could play the Ritz,
Right.
or but we never connected with certain territory. And I think it was maybe to do with radio. I don't know. It's very difficult. You can't. England is such a small country in comparison to the States. So you can be big in England, you can be big in Japan, you can be, but for some reason, America is just such a massive place. It's difficult. It's difficult to unless you get that, like Def Leppard got that album that was radio friendly and went ballistic.
Yeah,
You know,
Pyromania, then
yeah,
Hysteria. Yeah.
yeah, Pyromania. I think I did the tour with Def Leppard with Gary, opening on a 3-act bill. So Def Leppard were headlining. It was someone Crocus, and then Gary doing 40
That's a
minutes set.
great lineup.
That is, I mean, this was really. I want to jump ahead, but to watch my time.
Yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead, but what I did after UFO was basically go to Gary's band as for that tour, for nothing more than just to tour the States with Def Leppard and do that, do those gigs.
Was that Corridors? Towards the end of
Uh,
Corridors?
it was the tail end of Corridors.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did say to Gary quite, for me, quite sort of not, I can't remember what the word is, but I was just said to him, look, you can forget me doing anything of the jazz fusion rock stuff.
Because that was
Forget
Coliseum back then, yeah.
yeah, it was, and I said, I am not Don. I will. But what I did have was the singing and the guitar playing. So even though I can't get, pit my wits against Don as a keyboard player or any of these people, I did the package. I had a little package that was useful for Gary. That suited Gary down to the ground, so I could play guitar confidently and I could sing confidently and I could play the keyboards. But keep playing the keyboards. Nothing. It's nothing I've ever really
Did you guys
enjoyed.
click right away?
Yes, yeah. There is a very. I'll be very brief with this, but I had met Gary. I met Gary when I was with Wild Horses, and he always used to scare the hell out of me. He always had this sort of look in his eyes, and I never talked to him because he scared me to death. And in fact, my friend worked with Gary when he was in G Force, and he was the sound guy. And he said to me, "Oh, this was before Wild Horses actually." And he said, "Oh, Neil, come down, come and listen to the band rehearsing." And the first time I met Gary was when I was ordered out unceremoniously of this rehearsal because he didn't want anyone, which Gary never didn't want anyone he didn't know sitting in and watching him play.
Uh,
And Gary and I laughed and laughed and laughed about this years later because it was just that was our first meeting, and he kicked me out. Kicked me out of the room, So it's sort of a bit Gary that actually, So, but yeah, we did click. We did click. I knew Neil Murray. Neil Murray was playing bass, so I know Neil for a long time. Ian Pace was playing drums,
right.
and I've always said because I came from UFO, who are bigger in the States, particularly than Gary was at that time. I would say better, but they were bigger. And I thought if Ian can do this, if he can place third on the bill to Def Leppard, then I could do it. There's no reason why I can't do it.
Right, right.
And it was a paid job because UFO had no money. So when UFO stopped, I had no money. I had no wage.
Oh, wow.
Paul was the same. Phil had to sign on what we call the dole here, because once that final check came in, that was it. There were no royalties. We didn't get royalties.
Mm.
It was all such a mess. So I needed to work. So going with Gary was not really even an option.
Can I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about just the whole Pete Way leaving
Oh yeah,
and making contact and how does Billy Sheehan get into UFO? How did that come to
yeah.
and that really was a square peg, round going into a round hole.
Yeah, yeah. Very the Eddie Van Halen and the bass. I'm very fond of Billy. I thought Billy was extremely professional, and I felt very sorry for him being put into this mayhem, because it was mayhem back then. And Pete left. But I think Pete was burnt out a bit, and also he didn't like. He says. We said the direction the music was going. I would probably say that Making Contact is a harder edged album than Mechanics,
Yeah,
which is what I like. I don't,
absolutely.
yeah, I don't, there's all these urban myths fly around left, right, and centre, but I like rock music. I like heavy rock music. I like guitar based music. I'm not into prog. Oh, look, hang on, what we got?
Oh,
Oh, yes, there we are. Oh,
oh,
bless. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not into sort of too overly complicated stuff. So I think, unfortunately, I just got, again, I would say I got a bit swept up with the new technology and all that stuff. But Making Contact is a harder album. But Billy was never going to join to the band. I don't think. I don't think we ever saw it as him joining.
it was
And
just
in
a
fact,
sub.
yeah, well, yeah, but a very talented sub. Very different to Pete. Good showman. It was only going to be for a short time because he
Because
had,
I saw that you had Paul Gray on the sidelines,
yeah, he
ready to jump in.
yeah, jump off a cliff. Yeah, he Paul came out. It was awful. We'd done. two-thirds, I think a third of the tour, two-thirds, maybe half, with the tour with Billy. And Paul Gray was coming out to step in. And we were in Athens, this dreadful story about us and it had been going downhill, bit by bit by bit by bit. And everyone, I wouldn't say myself particularly or Andy, but certain people
I
were
read the
getting.
story. How big was the jug?
Yeah, it was pretty. It was a can. It was a can. But the promoter was so excited. We had 3 dates in Athens planned, 5,000 seater, I think, 3 or 5. And they were so excited to get a UFO to play there. And when we arrived, outside each of our doors was this huge bottle of Metaxa brandy. And by the end of the day, Phil's one had gone completely. It was outside the room, finished. And it's pretty heavy stuff. And we thought, uh-oh. And unfortunately, Phil did have a bit of an evening. And we got pelted with things. But Billy got hit in the head with a
That was
can.
the M80, right? There was an M80 thrown at the stage.
Yeah, 83. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And Paul Gray was standing there to see what he was going to be doing for the next weeks. And in fact, in the end, he only did one night because we actually very strongly said we're not going to do any more. We can't go on like this. Something awful is going to happen. So we actually cancelled the tour. It was very brave of us because we always tended to do, the show must go on, but we just said,
Yeah.
no, this is not right. It's not right. It's not. And so we did one English tour to finish off with, and that was it, supposedly it. But then Phil is UFO, so it's up to Phil. Phil got another band together with
Right,
Atomic.
because then he took a break and then Misdemeanor
Yeah,
happened.
and then he
Yeah.
sort of just carried on a bit, and he did other things. So yeah, I mean, I at the time I didn't think it would do any more. I must admit, we did think it was finished, but you've got to learn a crust. You would get out there and do it. And Phil was only 30, but he was then about 34. You've got your life to live. You've got your living to make. He's a trooper. He wants to carry on, which is why he's doing stuff now. That he wants to carry on and be involved. So good on them. I was very pleased that they carried on. Really,
Okay,
it
now
was
let's
good.
get to the good stuff. So now
Oh,
this is
oh,
the American version
oh yeah,
of
big
the
time.
album
Yeah,
cover, but this was that's a bold statement. I love this logo. This is
yeah, the logo's good actually. Yeah, that was our backdrop.
awesome.
I think we had two backdrops actually, but I think that was the backdrop we used for the most of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was a good tour. That I mean, Gary was starting to sort of dedicate, what's the word, delegate,
Delegate and dedicate.
no, delegate, leave some singing to me, which I quite liked.
Right, right, right.
And so in 1984, we went through, I think I might be right in saying 4 drummers in 1984, possibly. We had
I
started
saw you
with,
with Bobby Sweenard.
yeah, that's right. So we started with Ian Pace, Bobby Kennard, Paul Thompson. We had three maybe. And so Paul Thompson did the last few, he did the live video with us. But yes, for that tour, which was the continuation of Victors for the Future. But then we started to record bits of Run for Cover. Then.
Right. And then you did that's where We Want More came
Oh
into.
yeah, we want more. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We want more. I mean, that's quite a good live album, actually. I think it's pretty
And
strong.
you guys were opening for Rush then.
Yeah, we did. We did an American tour with Rush, and that seemed to be Gary. I don't know, for some reason breaking through in the States was hard. We did that with Rush, which you would have thought would have been pretty good, but it was getting radio play. It was getting. He got in a load of different producers, people like the guy that produced Asia and Chris Thomas, and certain people who had a certain sound that he produced, but it still didn't really translate. Gary did better in Europe, Scandinavia, and Japan. He was, but we were still doing. And then the last American tour we did in '87 for Wild Frontier, and unfortunately back we were doing tiny little clubs,
Well,
and it
well,
yeah
but don't rush it too quick. But I just want to go on. Devil in a Heart, even though it
yes
didn't make the album,
yeah
brilliant,
yes yes
brilliant.
yes yeah
And I can see Teenage Idol. He really tried to use. I think he was trying to get that sounded like an airplay, radio airplay type of song.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah. No, I mean
yeah.
all that. You see, Empty Rooms was the single, one of the singles from that, and then we re-recorded it for
Well,
the.
you're pushing empty rooms.
Yeah. Empty Rooms was. I mean, it was a very long thing to release
I
as a
have
single.
5 different versions.
Yeah, yeah, good. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I'm going to happily give you my money, Neil.
thank you. That's great. I tell you, no, I was joking about one of my houses. So yes, it's yes, it was a good one. That yeah, best 5 minutes of my life. Gary. I gave Gary the idea, and the original recording I'd done, and then Gary just took it to another level. So I don't hold myself in particular, stead for that. But it was good to be involved, with that song. It was really a very good thing to have
So
produced.
the same thing. So now so what year is this now?
That was 84 going into
84. Okay. So again, I got a 77, 30. I'm 16 years old. I'm
right.
at Lemoore in Brooklyn.
Yes,
Gary
yes,
Moore plays Lemoore in Brooklyn. Craig
yes,
Gruber on bass.
yes, great,
Mr.
yes,
Neil Carter,
yes,
Bobby
and Bobby
Sweenard,
Chenard,
and
yeah,
Mr. Gary Moore. And I'm right in front of Gary's face the
yeah.
entire show.
He
And
sweats a lot
and
in
and
those.
Gary bent. I mean, I have my brain still sees Gary bending down in front of me playing guitar. I mean, I just blown away. And you singing parts of "Wishing Well" and
Yeah,
"Shapes of Things."
yeah,
It
yeah.
was. I mean, and that stage is small,
Yes, there is tiny. Yeah,
really, really small.
I
And you were
think I
kind
could.
enough. You were kind enough. You signed my ticket stub.
I,
I got a picture with Bobby and Gary hid in the bus.
yes, that sounds a bit like Gary. Gary could be a bit on and off about meeting people. He some days he'd be great doing it, and he was a very warm person, really. But he would suddenly go into there would be the sort of like I would say the miss, but not a miss. But he'd then just sort of not want to know, and so he was a bit, it was either that or that, So he could be so kind to people. But then some days he just didn't want to know, and so yeah, often he would go. I mean, Bob and I, Bob Daisy and I, in later years, and with Eric, we'd always make a point. People pay money to see you.
And
They buy,
Eric Singer was a ball buster.
yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was a character, and he still
He
is a
was.
character.
Yeah, I know. I have great, happy memories of that lineup. I was very fond of Bobby Chenard. Bobby Chenard made me laugh continually. He used to say, I used to say to him, "How you doing, Bobby?" And he goes, "I'm high as a motherfucker." And that was Bobby's. And we used to get Bobby to say it, so all of us would go in turn, go, "How you doing, Bobby?" "I'm high as a motherfucker." And so he came out with some brilliant little one-liners, and he was good. And to be honest, Gary, who was so anti anyone doing anything naughty, was would got on really well with Bobby. Bobby played it brilliantly, and he really
Yes.
did. Gary was so tough on drummers, and yeah, Bobby seemed to seemed to just sail through it the whole time. He really did. He was tough on all of them, Eric, even Ian Pace. Gary was so metronomic in his approach to things, and so it was a tough gig.
So
It was a
you would stand back and like if he would he berate him or go that's wrong or your timing is
oh
slow.
yes, there'd be a lot
He
of
was
parade.
very direct.
He was very direct. Yeah, he didn't suffer anything gladly.
Yeah.
Didn't suffer fools. Not fools, but he didn't suffer any sort of, I would say, weakness. If he saw a weakness in someone, he would actually it would niggle at him, and so therefore he wanted things. I've said this to someone recently that I know now. I didn't think it then, but I now know that Gary's whole thing was to have something solid that he could play over. So
Right.
the thing that was the most important thing to Gary was the guitar. So if he felt unseated by the tempo or he felt unseated by something, it affected his playing. He was just very into his own playing. And I think that was really what it was. So that's why we had 11 drummers or something, or 12 drummers over the course of the time. It was hard. It was a hard gig that to
All right, now
do.
let's get to this. This had 11 musicians on the album itself.
Yes, yeah, it was a cast of thousands. Yeah.
And how did Glenn Hughes get approached to be part? And let me tell you, him, unfortunately, again, you got Glenn at the bad time.
Yeah, I think we didn't get him at his best. Yeah, I think it was Gary liked the Hughes Thrall album, and he therefore we got by default we got Gary Ferguson through that, and he liked always. I mean, everyone always likes Glenn's voice, and I think it was just he thought it was a possible way forward. It was doomed to failure because Glenn is his own man and wouldn't want to be Gary Moore. And I think Gary said that you could hardly put Gary Moore and Glenn Hughes and Neil Carter and da. He just it was Gary Moore. It
Right,
wasn't
right,
that is the brand, if you know what I mean. So that's how
right.
he
It
said.
wasn't a person anymore.
No, no, it's a bit like a band. So the band changed, but it was still Gary Moore.
Right.
And I don't think Glenn was 100% comfortable with it. And I just think it's a shame because there's some good work there. But it just,
Reach for the Sky.
oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
no, I mean, Glenn was fantastic. He was always one of my favorite singers,
all
always.
messed up. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
no, yeah,
once in
yeah.
a lifetime. I mean, there's some really great, great, great stuff on there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it really is. It's yeah, no, it's a good album. That it's a good album. And but like you said, cast of thousands, a lot of different producers as well.
Oh yeah.
So there wasn't. It's I don't think it sounds bitty, but it's. I think Wild Frontier is a more cohesive album because it's one producer. So and as well after the war again are they're sort of one producer cohesive albums.
4 producers on this album.
Yeah. So I can see
So
that.
now it seemed to work out that Glenn just wasn't going to be able to work out for the tour.
No, I don't think it was going to happen. I don't. I think it was just a bit doomed to failure. A bit like with Cozy Powell later on, who are both fantastic players, fantastic musicians, nice people, but it's just they are themselves. They are their own men, and that's really why it didn't work.
And you never got to the States on the tour.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
no.
I have a Japan bootleg
Yeah, we did.
of
We used to do a lot in Japan. We used to.
yeah.
Japan was a big territory actually for Gary. No, then obviously then when we began Wild Frontier, which again, Gary, I had the least to do with that album. I got a couple of writing credits on it, and I think I played a couple of bits and pieces on it, and I sung. But Gary would work with different people, and I never took it personally. It's just he liked, and they used. There's a man called Andy Richards who worked with the Pet Shop Boys, and
Hmm.
he had a lot of expensive keyboards, and and then Peter Collins, who produced Wild Frontier, worked a lot with him. So that was why I never took it personally that I didn't.
Great production on that album.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's of its time, Paul. But it's there are some very good songs on there.
Oh,
And again, that carried on through to after the war. So yeah, so again, that was a well produced album. That
so I saw you at the Ritz on that tour,
yeah,
and then drove 3 hours in a snowstorm to see you at Poughkeepsie at the
wow,
Chance.
60. I love it. Yeah, that's good. Good. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
That were your
Yeah,
the only two New York state-wise dates
the
that you
dates. Yeah.
guys did.
Yeah, no, that was the final time we went. Final time we played there,
That was the
and
last time you played the States, right? After that,
yeah,
that tour.
didn't do anymore. Yeah, and in fact, after the war tour started a bit late because Cozy didn't carry on, and we had Chris Slade to get in. There we are, and we that was sort of like the beginning of the end, if you know what I mean. I didn't realise that Gary was so disenchanted with his rock stuff, and the tour was all right. It was good. I mean, we successfully toured massive arenas and massive things in Japan and did really, really well. But I had no idea. But he kept playing all this blues stuff
You
in
said
the
sound check.
yeah,
We'd
sound
start
check.
doing it.
Him, Bob, and Chris would spend an hour just jamming, and I voted with my feet because I don't really like the genre particularly. So I don't like. I'm not so keen on blues stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not the soloist, it's just basically the same thing, and I don't feel it. I don't feel that type of music. It was 10 years or like before my time, if you know what I mean. I grew up on Bowie, not the Hooper, Queen. Although they have roots in some of that stuff, blues itself isn't something so I didn't really realize that Gary was thinking along those lines. And then Bob said, why don't you make a blues album, Cobber? And he met why don't we make a blues album, this band.
Yeah.
But Gary just went off and did it on his todd, and of course that was it. That took off.
So you weren't still got the blues. You weren't approached, or you weren't. It had nothing
No,
to do with
I
it.
mean, it was meant to be initially. It was meant to be a side thing, and
Okay.
because of the success of it, and there was a bit of me that was a bit burnt out. There was a big bit of me that thought perhaps I don't want to do any more of this, but if Gary wants to do some, I'll do some. But I then met my partner. I was wanting to be at home. I didn't want to be on tour, and so it sort of left me. I can't explain it, but the hunger had sort of left me,
Right.
and therefore it worked out at the same time that Gary wanted to do this blues thing, and that took off, and it was just how it worked. It just so that's
And then you
why.
fast forward to 11 years, and you get the phone
Yeah.
call.
Yeah, with Gary, that was the strangest thing. 2010, because Gary's children went to the school that I taught at for 20 odd years, and he and I reconnected. And so he used to come up to my office and used to sit there and chat after school while he waited for his daughter. And one day, he caught me on a very bad day. I had an awful day, and he came and said, "Yeah, but how would you feel about doing a rock tour?" Oh, no, no, he said, "I'm going to do a rock tour." And I went, "Oh, that's nice for you." And I had you without even thinking, I had no gear whatsoever. And he said, "Well, how would you feel about doing it?" And I sort of said, "All right, yeah, I'll have a go," not knowing whether I could. You know what I mean? It was one of those things. I hadn't sung for 25 years. I hadn't done anything like that at all for all that time. And so it was a bit, it was a bit ooh. But the minute I walked on stage, it was like the
Like you
next,
never left.
yeah, like I never left, you know. But it was difficult. It was good because Gary was, he wasn't at his best, and I think it's been fairly well documented. So it was more difficult then. And
Yeah.
when we got to the end of the tour, we were going to do an album, but neither of us could come up with anything particularly. We were trying to come up with material, but didn't really find it very easy, then I just had decided to say that I wasn't going to do any more. But that coincided with poor Gary passing away. So I never actually had to tell him that I
Right.
wasn't going to do any more. But I
Oh,
just
you
realized,
weren't. You were
no,
good. Wow.
I was in like a square peg in a round hole. And as much as I wanted to support Gary and as his friend and do some stuff to for his benefit, because I had a job. So it
Right.
wasn't really so much for my benefit, it was to support Gary in this venture. But I just thought it was getting too tricky to try and do the both. And I had spent a long time building up my career as a music teacher and as a performer, and I just didn't feel right. It wasn't the right time for me to leave the school. And people might find that crazy. Gary Moore asks you to go on tour and you sort of bite his arm off. But I had to think a lot, long and hard about it because I'd had to rebuild my life after Gary went off and did his blues album.
Right. Of course.
Yeah, so that is what I had done. So I had a really good job. I was head of a department. I'd done all right. And I enjoyed it. I loved working with the kids. So anyway, so that unfortunately, poor Gary passed away, and then we eventually decided that we were going to leave and move down to the Canary Islands. So I retired when I was about 55. I stopped. So yeah, until
So
until
so I could give you my little history. So Paul Raymond passes away, right?
yeah, yeah.
And on a Facebook page, I write, I know it's soon. I said, but if Phil should ever have the idea of bringing UFO back, I really think Neil Carter should join the band.
It's very sweet. Yeah, oh, thank
Right?
you.
So guess what I get? Berated.
No, you're kidding, really?
Oh
Oh,
my! Well, because he just passed away. How dare you? And I wrote
oh, I
just,
see.
but I said no one read the wording,
Yeah, no, 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 no one ever does. You
and
know,
and lo and behold, like
yeah,
like a fortune teller
yeah, yeah.
along comes
No,
Mr. Carter.
I know. I was examining in England, and I'd come over for a couple of weeks, and I saw that they were doing their last tour, and I thought, oh, I've got to go and see them. I can't. I hadn't seen them since we stopped. And my Kate, the famous Fatty Alice Carr, is my cousin, and so she got me a ticket because I didn't have any contact information for Phil. I didn't, anything at all or Andy. Yeah, she got me a ticket, and I went, but I had to go back to the venue where I was examining. I had to leave early, so I never got to see them. I got to see them up to the middle of Vinnie Solo in Rock Bottom. I had to go, so I had to get a train. But I just, I thought it was just so wonderful. It was just such an enjoyable experience. The warmth from the crowd, the way the band had worked within the band, and how funny Phil was. And I just thought, my God, this is great. I'm so glad I came to see them. So when I got a call through my cousin from their sort of manager, arranger, and said, "How would you feel wondering whether you'd be interested?" And thinking I'd say no, but actually I just thought, yeah, of course. It was a no-brainer, complete no-brainer, and I was so glad that I did it. I really was. It was
We all are.
yeah, it was just a blast. It was just such fun, and I found it's funny when you're young. 10 years between people seems a lot. So when I joined UFO, I was 22, and Phil was 32, and he seemed so much more experienced and worldly and older than me. But as you get older, that difference, and of course,
Yes.
we had different life experiences. I've gone through a completely different career for 20 something years, and I've been with Gary, I've done all these different things. So I actually could feel more, I would say an equal, but I just didn't think about it any differently that I was going back as sort of like a peer, and to work with Andy again, who I always got on well with. And I loved Vinny. Rob's a great guy. But so the nucleus of the band was so fun. It was just such fun, and I was really sad that we didn't carry on. Very very sad.
Did
Uh,
did Phil want to introduce "We Belong Tonight"? Your era? Was it?
well, actually, bizarrely, they were already playing it. So they played it in England. They played
Ah,
that.
okay.
Yeah, they were playing that, and they were playing Making Moves as well. So those two songs were in the set when I
Okay.
joined. So it was quite good because it's all muscle memory. I mean, I've not touched the guitar for 10 years, So had to actually get a guitar. I had to go and buy a guitar to go and do it,
You don't have that giant white guitar anymore? How
No,
is that a heavy guitar? That looked like a heavy guitar.
yes, but Phil snaffled it at the end of that tour, and I was happy to see the back of it because it just fed back and it was horrible to play. It was a horrible thing to play. So, in fact, the one I was using on the final European tour is a sort of smaller version of the Duesenberg, and it's a smaller version of that. And actually, it's a lovely guitar, whereas that white guitar was horrible. And I was sort of quite happy to see the back of
And
it.
you played it all the time.
I know. No, Phil thought it looked good on me, so that was why. I don't know if it was a piss take. Actually, it could have been. He could have thought the guitar was bigger than me. But yeah, but no, he that went to Phil, and then I said to Phil, whatever became of that? He said, oh, I think I might have given it away, and so he doesn't actually know what happened to it. So, yeah.
All right,
So
so
yeah,
now Phil gets sick, right?
yes,
And I think COVID happened too, right? So I want to wrap up with Mogg's Motel. So
yeah.
now you get the phone call about Phil wanting to do something else now.
Yeah, well, Phil had through the tour had said to me, "Have you got any ideas?" And I said, "Well, I haven't, but I'll have a go." And so during COVID, when we weren't seeing each other, I had in my old house I had a separate apartment, and I set that up as a studio. I had all the gear, the guitar, and I had to download a program to compose on. All this stuff that I hadn't done for so long. So this is where the germs of those songs came together. And again, like I said, Phil's very good. He'll say, he'll send you a clip of something. He says, I really like this. And I'll say, okay, and I'll go away and I'll do something not the same as, but with the same mood or the same vibe. And it's really good because it helps you create as well. I write lots of stuff, but none of it is always, useful for Phil. So that's what we did. So, and Tony Newton, I have to give the biggest credit to Tony Newton. He really was the catalyst and has encouraged Phil and done a lot of work with Phil. And he wrote the majority, I would say the majority, but he wrote a good two-thirds of the album.
Oh, the
So
wrong houses. I
oh, it's great. That yeah, no,
heavy
no, yeah,
rotation. Oh
yeah,
my
that's
God.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant.
In fact, that one, if we do it like do some live dates, that would be one of the ones we
Yeah,
do.
absolutely.
Yeah. And in fact, I like the with the little intro. Um, I would imagine we could actually extend that to make an intro tape because actually that I did that whole thing. Um, Tony played a little bass two-bar bass line, and I created that from that. And again, that was Phil saying, I really like the music of Leo Schifrin, and we were
Oh,
listening to Bullet and all those
yeah.
sounds. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I'll have a go." So again, this is me, gung ho, have a go. So that I created that thing with all those sounds and the flute and all this sort of thing. But I probably would do it, make it into an intro tape. I think if
So
we
now
did.
you had definite debut dates, right? Happening for that.
Yeah, well, there's been lots of talk of different things. I think, I mean, obviously with Phil's health, he's got to feel confident that he's going to be okay. And also, there's been lots of other things going on. And I think, we now, I know the four of them got together in England,
Yes.
and they've been through some of the things, So the next time they get together, I will go over, and we'll just see how it all sounds.
Now, will it be writing on Mogg's Motel or starting to write new material?
We have started to write new material. Again, it's just there's been lots going on, so we will see what comes out. I mean, Phil's 78 in a couple of months, no, a couple of weeks. So you have to bear that in mind.
You know.
It's so.
But time waits for no one, too, Neil. I mean, if
Oh yeah,
if
I
he
know.
could get out that door of that house,
Yeah, absolutely. No, he will, and he will. Because he's got that. That thing. It's just the time it takes to do everything. It does take everything takes always takes time. So,
Yeah.
but we've got quite a few tunes ready. So
Oh,
it's
great.
just he's just got to come up with some lyrics and do all that sort of stuff. So yeah, yeah, it's good.
So, Neil, I kept you a little longer than I should have.
It's okay, don't worry. I've actually now got to go to my new house and go
Yes.
and find out how to work the security system. So, yes, because I'm moving house next week. So, yeah, so I've got to actually, they've got to teach me how to work out the security system. So, we're just off down there. So, yeah, but it was really lovely to talk to you, Paul. It's really,
Real,
really nice.
real pleasure. I want to thank you
Yeah,
for being
brilliant.
our first guest
Ah,
on
it's
Hard
great.
Rock History.
Yeah, good,
And
good, good.
like I said, the next Mogg's Motel, you come on, we'll promote it, and we'll talk about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Hopefully, I get to see you come in the States with it.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, but we, very feel free to ask me at any time. I'm always happy to talk. As you can hear, you never can't shut me up. So
Thank you,
yeah,
Neil.
yeah, great. Okay, Paul, you have a good day. You have a
All
great
right.
day.
Cheers,
Okay.
everyone. All right. Take care. Bye.